gmail.com. And that is it for me, because I'm sure you guys want to hear from the star herself and the rest of this amazing panel. So I will kick it off to you guys.
Hi everyone, I'm Erica. I'm an editor with Bustle, and we cover news, entertainment, lifestyle, beauty, and fashion. So excited to be here with you guys. We are going to be asking for audience questions in a bit, so be thinking about that. And everyone who is watching on Instagram, that goes to you as well. So let me go ahead and intro everyone that's on our amazing panel. The woman next to me, of course, needs no introduction. I'm sure you guys all know her from
the past 90 minutes.
Past 90 minutes, but I'm sure before that as well. Any Pretty Little Liar for you? I figured, but now also adding the credit of director and producer as well. Give her another round of applause. She really deserves it. And then next to her, we have Claire Maisko, the CEO of the National Eating Disorder Association. She's also an internationally recognized expert on eating disorders, body image, and media literacy. She's the author of Does This Pregnancy Make Me Look Fat? The Essential Guide to Loving Your Body Before and After Baby, as well as You're Amazing, a no-pressure guide to being your best self, and award-winning self-esteem manual for girls. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having me. And then down at the end, we have Stephanie Covington Armstrong, a Brooklyn native, an author, a playwright, a screenwriter, ghostwriter, and speaker. Stephanie's groundbreaking memoir, Not All Black Girls Know How to Eat, A Story of Bulimia, is the first book by an African American that addresses the link between eating disorders and sexual abuse. So thank you so much as well, Stephanie. Troian, what inspired you to write this film?
A lot. A lot of my family is here, and I was incredibly fortunate as a young person going through this to be supported by them, but I found that oftentimes in my conversation with them, it was really, really difficult to communicate why it was so difficult to eat or what I was coming up against. So my family are also full of artists. My mother is here tonight. She's a writer, and she inspires me constantly. And so I thought, well, if I can't just explain it to them, maybe I could put them in my shoes, and maybe I could. Hi, Joey. Maybe I could get them to understand a little bit better that way. So I started writing, and this story came to me, and I felt that it was a little bit easier to explain if there was a way for me to personify the voice. Because I think sometimes it's a little bit difficult for you to tell people, you're like, I hear a voice in my head, and you're like, okay. And you're like, no, but what if that voice was somebody that meant a lot to you? What if that voice actually sometimes helped you? What if that voice was confusing for you to hear? And so I felt that I could do that through a film, and that was where Feed came from.
Very powerful. I know that this has been a long time in the making.
Yeah.
During that stretch, did you come up against fears of telling this story, insecurities of putting this out there, and how did you?
Totally. I mean, the longer you sit with something, the more you're like, wait, why am I doing this? And why maybe I shouldn't, because this is not getting done. There were also a lot of people who told me, look, if you want to tell a story about your experience with an eating disorder, why not just tell that story? Why not just tell that story? And I was like, well, I don't really want to do that, because I don't feel like that's going to change people's opinion.
Yeah.
Or I feel like there's a lot of misrepresentation or miscommunication about this mental illness and eating disorders in general. And so I wanted to present a different narrative and hopefully challenge people's conceived notions about it. And then there were a lot of people that were like, why not just make a horror movie? And I was like, well, I'm not really trying to do that either. But so yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking about whether or not I should do it until my director, Tommy Bertelson, was like, I'm not going to let you not do this. So.
And speaking of which, based on the subject matter and how sensitive it is, did that influence the way that you put together the team?
Absolutely. I felt incredibly grateful to work with a longtime collaborator like Tommy. We've been working together for 10 years. So he knows me inside and out, but he also didn't, it's funny because he didn't know me at this time of my life, but I also had my brother Chad working on the film, who has known me since I was a very little girl. And so to have my family there was really important for me, especially in making this, because I needed to turn to them at certain points and say, I'm scared. I don't know how I'm going to do this. And to have them say, you know, it's your choice. And we're here for you if you want to make this. And we're here for you if you decide that you don't want to make this. And they've been instrumental every step of the way.
That's great. Opening it up to the group, for each of you, what is one misconception about eating disorders that each of you wish that you could completely eliminate?
That's a very good question. There are, unfortunately, a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings about eating disorders. Eating disorders are serious public health issues. They affect 30 million Americans, 20 million women, and 10 million men will struggle with eating disorders at some point in their lives. These are very overwhelming disorders. They take over all aspects of your life, and they're not, as I think was really portrayed very well in the film, they're not just about food. They're not just about a drive for thinness. They're about a lot of things. So I think, you know, the importance of talking about the complexities of eating disorders is really important. And then the other thing that I want to communicate, and we hear a lot of people who contact the National Eating Disorders Association helpline, who talk about how their experience is not always reflected in mainstream media, and eating disorders are not always visible. There are certainly people who get to extremes, extreme thinness, extremes like what was portrayed in the film, and that's a reality. But many people who struggle with eating disorders, you would not be able to tell by looking at them. People of all ages, of all sizes, of all races. And so I think it's important, if you or someone you know is struggling, to reach out for help. Recovery is possible.
I can't follow that.
Yeah.
She actually said everything I was going to say. So I'm all good for the next question.
Troian, anything from you?
Oh no, she really did sum it up well. I know I was like Stephanie on, but truthfully,
props. Okay. What is one way that women can support each other in body positivity and in maintaining a healthy body image?
It's so simple. It's like, just be nice. Like that, to me, that's the simplest thing you can do. It's like, don't comment on another person's body. It's none of your business. And just be, I love a compliment. I love to get them. I love to give them. I love a compliment. And I just feel like that's so, it's so important, you know, to constantly think of how you can be of service. And being of service is looking for something good in the person next to you.
Yeah.
So that to me is really important.
I will say, you know, to answer your question, I think body positivity is really important for women and for men. There are a lot of men who struggle with body image issues as well, and so I think being kind and everything that Stephanie said is really important, and particularly in social media, we have a great opportunity. There's a lot of wonderful, as Karen was talking about, opportunities to support each other and spread that kindness.
Oh, and I want to piggyback off of that and say, there's something I heard as a child that will stick with me for the rest of my life. If you can't say something nice, don't say anything. You know, and social media is like the perfect platform to use that. Yeah. So.
Strong.
Absolutely.
yeah, I feel, like, again, it's all just piggybacking, but I know that the theme of the night is kind comments. And I think that it's really important, exactly what you just said, which is that not all people who are struggling with their bodies have a sort of like externalized, obvious struggle. And certainly I think that there are the expectation that men don't go through this. And I think that if you can remember that you never know what it's like inside of somebody's body or inside of their head or what they're feeling that day, then you can always find something kind to say and support them, because you also never know how somebody's going to take something.
That's right. I think piggybacking off of what you guys...
The other theme of the night is piggybacking.
This was not planned. Speaking of social media and platforms like Instagram, I know that you have used Instagram as a way to share your story. Can you guys speak as to kind of why you've chosen those platforms, how those platforms can be beneficial to women and men who are going through these struggles, and also what hope do you hope to send to people with those messages?
I mean, we're here tonight because of Instagram, so I want to say thank you to them for all the support that they've shown, and for all the support that they've shown the mental health awareness community, and all of the work that we've been doing together. I've just been blown away, because I think that I had a very, very sort of like concretized idea about Instagram, where I was like, it's just the highlight reel of your life. And everybody on it is like beautiful, and nobody on it has a bad day. And I noticed that like for a long time, because I thought that I was only posting the highlight reel of my own life. You know what I mean? Like I would go to an audition, it would go horribly, I'd cry in my car, and then I'd post like a beautiful like selfie from set. And I was like, this is not actually my whole experience. It's really not. It is a very, very small part of my life. And also, what is that helping? Why do I feel the need to only share the ups or the easy days or the great moments? What if I had a community that I could speak to about the other moments, whether they were good or challenging or angry or whatever they were? But what if I had a community that accepted that, and how would that support me in my life and support me in my work? And that has been the most incredible discovery, particularly releasing and working on such a personal film, is that I was really afraid that if I spoke out about the struggles that I had in the past, it would sort of be like, I don't know, like ruining the illusion, or like exposing to people that maybe I wasn't like the pretty little liar that they thought. Maybe they'd be like, ugh, actually I really don't want to like look at that one. I'll just go like look at the shiny magazine covers, But the incredible thing about Instagram is I realized over the engaging with it in a different way and engaging with the community of social media in a different way, there was actually so much more honest conversation. Yeah. It wasn't just like, you're beautiful. It was a like, hey, I'm a person too. I struggle with this. How are you dealing with it? What do you do on a bad day? How do you handle this? And I was suddenly having like a conversation that I was interested in having. Yeah. So I'm really grateful for that, just an eye-opening evolution that I had.
Yeah. And I think everyone goes through experiences where they think that they're the only person, and sometimes opening yourself, being the person who can open themselves up and share, not only is helpful to other people, but can be helpful to you too.
Yeah, authenticity can be very healing, and I think that the other word that you brought up, which really resonates with me, and as someone who has personal experience with an eating disorder, but also as a leader of an organization that helps people with eating disorders, there is often a tremendous sense of isolation, and the opportunity to connect with other people who get what you're going through and to feel supported, and to really connect people to help. Carolyn was talking about some of the tools, but there are ways that we can engage with social media where we're keeping an eye out and taking care of the people that we're seeing and engaging with, and being supportive with our comments, and if there are serious concerns, to really reach out and offer support and help for that person or connect them to resources. So that's my hope for how social media can be used, and I see that potential, and I see that strength of community every day in the work that I do at NEDA.
Do we have an Instagram question, perhaps?
We do. This is for Troian. So, why did you want to play Olivia instead of casting someone?
That's a great question. I think that For me, there was, I think for a long time I really wanted to play Olivia, just because in writing the script, coming to it as an actor, it was just natural for me. I put myself in her shoes every day, and I was writing things and I was imagining them. And then it got to a certain point where actually when we were very close to making it, where I turned to my director, Tommy, and I said, I really don't think that I should play Olivia. If you need to go out and find somebody else to do this, I don't know if I need to do this, if I should do this. Actually, is it going to make it more confusing for people to see me, in this role, if I had a personal experience? And what Tommy was very good at communicating to me was, that this is a role that I had a very deep connection to, and I had at one point created it, and at one point felt emboldened in order to share it and share a part of myself. And so to take a step outside of that conversation, while it would have been totally acceptable and fine, I think he was like, I don't think that was the original intention of the script. So he encouraged me to do that.
You want to do one more?
We have a follow-up.
Yeah.
Was revisiting eating disorders from the movie painful or therapeutic?
This has been a really interesting question of late. Writing it was incredibly therapeutic. Writing my story, being able to, writing this story, being able to sort of like exercise those conversations in my head was great. I really loved it. Acting it was a little bit more challenging. There was the physical aspect of the sort of body transformation that I was doing for the film, and how I could engage with that, losing weight to that extreme or in that quick of a time period is never healthy. So there was a conversation to be had with a doctor. And for me, also putting myself in a room, in a scene with an actor who was sort of embodying and portraying the voice that I'd worked so hard to not listen to wasn't a really fun ride. It was definitely trippy. And, but I felt that it was almost important in holding my hand to the fire, and like Tommy and I discussed, finishing a journey that I had started out on. And so now watching it, while there are certain scenes that I certainly do not like to watch, and I definitely have my eyes closed, it was a very therapeutic journey. Sorry, that was so convoluted. But I'm like actually like experiencing it, you know what I mean?
Totally.
It's like, that's the crazy thing, is like I have an experience of writing it, I have an experience of acting it, and then I have an experience of like watching it with people. And I'm still right now processing that in front of you guys, so I'm sorry if I'm totally ineloquent.
Great.
Authentic.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephanie, I would love to know a little bit about your experience, and as a woman of color with a history of an eating disorder, do you feel like there is a difference for women of color?
Absolutely.
And what are some of those misconceptions? Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Sure. First of all, because of my color, I got to hide in plain sight. Like, no one ever assumed I had an eating disorder. And also because of my culture, the whole suffering in silence, strong black woman archetype, like I had a lot to live up to. So it was very difficult to seek help. And also, I don't come from an environment where mental health support is championed. It's like, it's isolating enough to have an eating disorder, but to have an environment and a society and a family that doesn't believe you should get help, that you should see a professional. It's alienating, isolating, devastating. It's all of those things. And then to kind of you almost have to walk away from everything you're taught in order to seek help. And because there's not a lot of education for eating disorders in underserved communities, and people don't like big organizations don't tend to want to put their money there. you have to actually go to the other side in order to get help. And that's, you're different at first.
Can you clarify what you mean by the other side?
You gotta go to the, you're already in the dark side because you're in an eating disorder, but you then have to, at least, I was taught that you don't go to white people to get help. You just, it's not a good look. And you don't want to appear weak. And you don't want to appear fragile or mentally unstable. So in order to get eating disorder help, you have to go outside of your community and outside of your comfort zone. Even though for anyone who's suffering with an eating disorder, there's no place that's less comfortable, but it becomes familiar. And so I remember talking to my family and saying, oh, I'm in therapy, and they were horrified. It was just there were so many other things I could have done that would have been more pleasing. And I had to kind of stand on my own and decide that I deserved mental health support, that I actually deserved it, and that I could not heal on my own, that was an actual fantasy. And the whole, we don't need a man, we don't need, I needed so much. And now I just the idea that you can sit down and talk to someone and someone can help you, that's fantastic. It's just fantastic. I recommend it.
Do we have any audience questions right here in the second row?
Hi. Okay, so first of all, I just have to say...
We have a mic.
First of all, I just have to say the script was absolutely fantastic, and the acting, just it was a little hard to watch and stuff because I know that I have said words like that before, and it was just so, so good. So I want to say congratulations to everyone who was a part of the film. And then for my question, you are such an inspiration to so many people, and I know that you have so many followers and stuff who, and with this Here For You thing, a lot of people reached out. Coming from someone who started a nonprofit, I want to help everyone, and you're so inspiring. I feel like you want to help everyone too, but there's so many people. How do you deal with being on such a high pedestal for everyone to see and reach out to, and not be able to help everyone?
Yeah,
great question.
So that is a great question.
Why, thank you.
You ask a fantastic question. What's your name?
Nikki.
Hi, Nikki.
I'm from Green River Club.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Okay. Hi. Yeah, it's a great question, Nikki, because one of the most vulnerable parts, as well as about speaking out around feed, was that a lot of people were talking to me, and they were like, as somebody who had an eating disorder, and I was like, interesting word, had. Because the whole point of the film and what you guys saw, the last scene, what I wanted to convey was that that's not something that just goes away. There is still a connection. There's still the sense of feeling it or hearing it or seeing it in Olivia's case. And it's about the choices that she's going to make moving forward. And I've been writing a lot of essays and sort of pieces that I've been speaking out of in Lenny Letter about the way that my continuing choice to be in recovery is still affecting me, and how I might not be struggling in the way that I was at one point, but how it changes. So first, it's very important for me to be open and vulnerable about the fact that it is a continuing journey, and that there's never any part of me that feels all done, or okay. It's there are days that blow. And I think it's important to talk about that, because I think that can also be a part of the alienation, the isolation, to think that once you're healed, you're all better. But how I personally handle being somebody who wants to start a conversation about this particular mental illness and eating disorders in general, but also not being a professional, or somebody, I'm not a therapist. I don't know the best thing to say to somebody. I can relate, and I can be somebody who can hopefully be a safe space for people to reach out to. But what I immediately want to do is point them in the direction of professionals, to recommend that if they feel that they're struggling or they know somebody who's struggling, please reach out and go to NIDA's website or call their hotline and, you know, learn more about what they might be dealing with, learn more about what their friends might be dealing with, see how they can support themselves or somebody else, how they can seek professional help, how they can enter into treatment. That's a really important thing for me to try to define, because I do experience a lot of people saying like, what do I do, or can we talk? And I want to preface all of that by saying I want to be here for you, and I am, and like I want to create space for you, but also I am not your ultimate resource to help yourself. I want to point you in the right direction of somebody who can better help you. So that's what I hope to do.
That's really great. Can you guys speak to if there was a person in your life who supported your journey in a way that was perhaps different or more helpful along the way? Kind of what they did that was uniquely beneficial to your journey? Do you want to start?
You can start. Okay, well, I think about my parents, and what was unique about my journey is that, and I was very fortunate in that I had my parents step in very early. I went on a diet, which was pretty typical. A lot of girls in my school, this was in middle school actually, were going on diets and obsessing about food and weight, and my parents both happened to be in the medical profession. They took that very seriously. I was very fortunate in that I had a pediatrician who knew something about eating disorders. Unfortunately, a lot of doctors are not as educated about eating disorders. And so all of these points along the way really led to a much better trajectory for me and my treatment. Not to say that it wasn't a struggle, but I am a big, big believer in early intervention and having both of my parents take that dieting seriously and say, no, this is a problem. So I would encourage you, if you know someone or you're starting to be concerned about someone in your life who seems too preoccupied with food or is isolating themselves, take that seriously and reach out for help, educate yourself. That made a huge difference for me.
Yeah, I wound up having people say to me, I'm kind of concerned about you. Because with me, they couldn't figure out what it was. They just knew that I was like wobbly. And so I think like having people be really concerned about me was like I'd spent so much of this disease hiding in plain sight. That eventually you can't hide it from anyone. Yeah. And so I had people say, look, we're worried. And, at a point, I just wanted to live. And that was the real turning point. And now, because of Claire and because of Nita, I always know where to send people. It's kind of an amazing organization. I've had the good fortune to be involved with them since 2009. And I mean, part of recovery is you pass it on. Mm-hmm. Like, so for me, I have friends I've known for years. We've recovered together. We are in recovery. It's kind of like pass on, like help someone. Not everyone. That's not what I'm saying. But you heal as a group. You heal with people. And then it's kind of, you pay it forward.
Yeah. On that note, can you speak a little bit about NIDA and kind of what you guys do, first of all, and what resources are available to people?
Sure. Well, the National Eating Disorders Association is the largest nonprofit organization in the U.S. that serves individuals and people who care about those who are personally struggling with eating disorders. As Troian mentioned, we run a helpline, and you can access all of our resources through our website, nationaleatingdisorders.org. So that's a big piece of what we do, is supporting people who are seeking help. We can connect people to treatment options, to support groups. Our volunteers can just offer support. And we have a lot of information also for friends and family members. We have toolkits, we have information about how to support someone. And we also do a lot of work in schools around early intervention. We have a screening tool. If you're concerned about yourself, you can go to our website and take the screener to really get connected to help. And most of all, we're here to provide hope. We believe that recovery is possible and that everyone deserves recovery, and we want to be here for you. So please, if you know someone or you yourself needs help, please reach out.
Instagram?
More questions?
Yeah, more questions? Yeah. I see you right there.
Hi, I just want to say amazing job on the film, the writing, the acting, I cried. But I'm a filmmaker as well, and I've written a feature, and it's very isolating and you go down a hole, and it's hard to get yourself out, and I would really love to write a book and a feature about the sexual abuse that I went through as a kid and all of that. And I just wanted to know, both the writers, if you have any tips on like keeping yourself in check and not going so far in that you can't get yourself out. In the isolation of all that and of writing.
I'll go first. One of the most important things to me while I was writing was a weekly visit with my therapist. So anything that came up that I was noticing echoing through my life, that wasn't about just going to the computer and writing down the scene. If I noticed that it was starting to bring up more feelings or starting to bring up old patterns or behaviors, I would go and I would speak to her about it. And she would say, maybe it's time for you to take a step back. Maybe it's time for you to, wait until we can have a couple more conversations that give you a better foundation for you to speak about this. Because it's not always easy. And the interesting thing is that while it can be incredibly therapeutic, it can also sort of keep you feeling like you're reliving certain moments of your life, or overly affected or overwhelmed. So I think that that's really important as a good therapist that you see often. But also I think what's really important is collaboration. I think that a really big part of me, a really important part of Feed for me was writing things and then giving them to my friends and saying, hey, how does this sound to you? Do you get this scene? What do you not get about this scene? Because then it made it about the film. It made it less about me keeping myself in that frame of mind or sort of like finding a way to keep engaged with those memories. And it made it more about communication. I saw what was landing about the narrative, what didn't work, what scenes sucked. You know what I mean? But it gave me that creative distance to treat it as a film rather than my own life.
That makes sense, thank you.
So, a couple of things. I thought that was a really good question because, first of all, any kind of trauma, I don't know if you guys are familiar with ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences. It's a test every human being should take. And if you have a lot of trauma, there's a lot of support for trauma. And like when I wrote my memoir, I wrote it thinking if it could help one person, then that's great. Now, that being said, I have a lot of recovery. I have long-term recovery. I don't play around with it. I don't play around with my food. It's, I just kind of live my life that way. I'm married. I have a 17-year-old biological daughter who's here. I have a bonus daughter who's 17 and a bonus daughter who's 15, and I help raise my 12-year-old nephew whose mother died of breast cancer. So I have a super full life. And I write for a living. So I just have to, it's balance. Oh, and I'm obsessed with Mahjong, just so we can throw that in the mix. I gotta say it. So I'm just saying, it's like so much of my eating disorder was isolation and being in a hole and just having a very tiny life. My life is so huge. It is like, that's how I see my recovery. You know, do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, to go back to another question that I think is, I totally agree about what an eating disorder particularly does to your life and making it really small and really isolated. And one of the people that really helped me and made me think about my recovery in a different way was when I went to theater school, and I had an acting teacher who kind of immediately just like saw me and saw that I was wobbly. And she said to me, she said, you know, I've been through my own journey with what you're going through. And she said, I'm going to tell you right now, you've got to make a decision whether you want to have that life or whether you want to focus on acting and whether you want to be creative. And she said, you can't do both. You're not going to be able to sustain both passions. And that was a huge moment for me because all of a sudden I needed energy for rehearsals. I needed to feed myself. I couldn't keep on making excuses and kind of holding myself up in rooms and denying myself, the relationship that I wanted to have with people because I wanted to have a bigger life. So that was a really important part of that.
Let's take another audience question. You in the back with the jacket and the glasses. Yeah.
I guess I'll just stand so I can see that.
Thanks.
My name is Matt.
Hey, Matt.
Given the community we're talking to, I'll just say I've been in recovery from an eating disorder for 10 years, specifically binge eating disorder. So I just want to say that it's possible for men to find recovery, and it's possible for men to find recovery. I'm a little bit jaded by the eating disorder community because I have a hard time feeling like I see my story being told. And I'm thoroughly impressed and surprised by your film for multiple reasons. And one of those for me tonight is that I lost my brother a year ago. And you articulated and showcased the experience of the grieving process in a way that I was not expecting to see tonight. And I really want to thank you for that. And one thing that I've learned is that my recovery and my grief and my life experiences allow me opportunities to confront myself and to know myself. So I would just like to ask, what have you learned through your confronting your eating disorder and even through your creative process, like what you've learned about yourself?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you so much, Matt, for being here and for saying what you said. That means the world to me that you would also be so honest and open with me and with everybody here tonight, so thank you. I learned a lot. I learned, it would be impossible to sum it up, but I think the thing that I learned the most was how to speak about this, was how to speak about my experience and my illness, and it was a trial by fire. in choosing to write a script about it and share that with my friends and family and my community. It was opening myself up to their opinions and their scrutiny, and it was opening myself up to people, being like, I don't really get this, or I don't understand, or, why are you doing this? And then I took it a step further, and when I brought it out to financiers and producers, so many people telling me what to do with it. I had somebody tell me at a studio that shall remain nameless that he was like, well, this is great because for sequels, like Matt could come back and haunt other girls, right? And I was like, and I'm going. I'm gonna go now. But I was like, but you took something else away from this, okay? But it was opening myself up to other people's opinions and thoughts about what was going on in a very, very vulnerable place in my own life. And now it's open up to a whole new group of people. And I'm terrified, and I'm also so overwhelmingly grateful. I'm gonna be okay. I'm grateful because I did say that one thing, which was that if I could help one person or encourage one other person to speak out about their experience, or to even just say I don't know, I'm struggling, I'm not doing so well, then I thought it would be worth it. And so that was what I learned from this experience. And I'm really, really grateful to everybody here tonight, everybody who helped me make it, and to everybody who's always been so supportive of it. Even to the guy who thought that Matt should be like a ghost that should come back and haunt other people. I'm grateful to him, you know what I mean? Because it was a part of the journey to get here. So, thank you.
Thank you for that question. So what I would like to close on is, if somebody is perhaps here or watching online and is worried about someone in their life, what's a good way to start that conversation if you're feeling uncomfortable or maybe awkward or scared, wanting to be sensitive? How would you advise that somebody reaches that conversation with the expert?
Well, first of all, it is important to speak up if you are concerned about someone, and that can be a really intimidating prospect, because you don't know what that person is going to say. You might be met with defensiveness. In fact, you most likely will be met with defensiveness. But it's important to keep trying and to let that person know that you care about them. Do it in a non-judgmental way. Eating disorders, as we saw, are very complicated. They're not about food. They're not, it's not just about wanting to be thin or any of these surface issues. These are very, very complicated illnesses, and so it's important to approach them with no judgment and just say, I'm concerned about you, I care about you. Educate yourself about eating disorders before you have that conversation. Choose a time when you can talk to that person one-on-one, and just really, really express your concern in a caring and non-judgmental way.
I just wanted to say something, because I see it a lot on Instagram, and one of the major information is power, and a lot of people don't know that laxative tea, the daily use of laxative tea, is a form of bulimia, and that leads to a lot of health issues. And so I just want to give a plug for not doing that.
Any final thoughts?
Yeah, just to follow up on that point, I do want to underscore that eating disorders are not always visible. So, if you're noticing that someone is overly concerned about weight, about food, if they're isolating themselves, all of these internal things that are happening with eating disorders, even, as I said before, in my experience, dieting. Not every diet leads to an eating disorder, but most people who have eating disorders, have experience with dieting. So, these early expressions of concern, pay attention to them. And sometimes that can be tough to do, because we live in a culture where there are a lot of confusing mixed messages about health and weight and food and body image and exercise. But just trust your gut. If something is wrong, if something feels off about someone you care about, speak up and say so.
Any other closing words from the panel? All right, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you as well for everyone listening. We do have a little surprise. So on the back of your chair, you can go ahead and on the back. Yeah, you guys all have a little card. So Instagram decided to surprise you guys with some positive comments that people have left. So if you guys want to go ahead and read those out loud as kind of a positive affirmation to yourself for your bravery here today.
Okay, I'll go first. This is from Stout Princess. I've suffered with anorexia for the past 2 years, and it means a lot to me that so many celebrities are helping to break the stigma. Oh my not shaking, okay? This is from LX. Thank you for what you're doing with pushing support for people with eating disorders and mental health. You're making a difference globally. I've struggled with mental health issues and an eating disorder, and from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you. And this is from Little Mixer JB. Great name. I just hope that one day I will be as strong and inspiring as you. My biggest dream is to speak up about mental health, to be able to talk about it with others so that they can understand. I will never be able to thank you enough for everything because I'm not sure if I'd still be around if it wasn't for you. I love you so much, and I hope that one day I get to thank you in person and tell you how incredible, smart, beautiful, and unbelievably talented and kind-hearted you are. You saved me. Now, those are some kind comments. Thank you, guys.
Wow, this is amazing. Okay, so the first one is from the EMJ. Every time I look at my arm and see the Nita symbol tattoo I have, I remember where I was and see where I am now. This one's from Kate Kivett. Nita brought me to my best friend, and I couldn't have recovered without her support. Because of Nita, I can say that I am healthy and happy, and so is she. You gave me the biggest blessing in my life. From Becky with bad hair. Awesome handle. Becky with bad hair, shout out. Every time I walked into the Nita office to volunteer, I felt like I was punching Ed, eating disorder, in the face, and it felt great. Becky's also badass. And then the last comment I have is from the middle ground. Nita was my gateway to the recovery community here online. It has helped me connect to some truly incredible people who are struggling with and triumphing over the same battles I face. Most of all, Nita's online presence and volunteering opportunities have helped me to embrace two important truths: that my voice is powerful and that I'm not alone. Wow.
The first one is T with SOF. I'm so proud of you. Thank you for being brave and vulnerable. You and your story and your words are so important and so empowering. Keep pushing through. X. Carrie 0617. What an amazing way to describe the struggles of an eating disorder. You are an inspiration to many suffering from this disease. Happa Megs. Thank you for this. People of color have ED too. Budding Twigs. This is not limited to certain people, and all people don't share identical stories with regard to the root of their ED. The best help is open-minded help. Thank you.
Thank you so much again, you guys. Thank you to Instagram for hosting this and putting this on.